Hey everyone, hope you are doing awesome. Welcome back to my channel PEGAhut with another video. Thanks everyone for subscribing to my channel, and if you haven't hit the bell icon yet, please do so you won't miss any of my videos. Please hit the like button and leave me a comment or feedback if you like the video or the way I have explained. Welcome to my part 3.6 of REST integration, where we're gonna talk about the post method, how PEGA going to expose the post method. And this is my final part of my entire REST integration series. So I would strongly recommend you guys, if you wanted to be an expert in REST integration and how PEGA communicates with an API and how PEGA exposes an API, please do watch all my videos starting from API part 1 to 3.6. So what we're gonna learn today is about post. So what we have covered so far, apart from API part 1 and part 2, which is the basic one, we have covered 3.1 to 3.3, which is purely about how PEGA going to connect to the REST API, where REST API is PEGA is consumer over here. And then 3.4, 3.5 and 3.6 is where we are going, we have discussed about how PEGA as a provider is going to expose an API. So we have covered 3.4 and 5. Now today we are going to cover 3.6, which how PEGA is exposing a post service so that consumer can pass the request body and how PEGA going to process that and respond back to the consumer. Now the use case which I'm going to talk about is, let's assume consumer will provide all the employee detail to create an entry in the employee local data storage. So in my previous part 3.5, where PEGA exposes a get service, the use case which we have discussed is consumer is going to call PEGA by passing the right employee ID, and PEGA is going to take this employee ID and fetch the details from the local data storage. Now here we are going to create an entry in the local data storage, and that entry is going to be employee detail. Now to do that, what we need, obviously a request body where I need to have name, age and salary. Now as part of this use case, I'm going to make this as a mandatory field, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an employee ID. I will insert that and I'll try to create an employee ID, and that employee ID is going to be sent back to the consumer so that they can know that employee ID being created. Now here one thing you need to understand is PEGA should build the below response code. One is 200 when successfully created. Generally it's always going to be 201 or 200 depending on the need. So you can do that. I've just put 200. Feel free to go for 201 also. And then 400 when the mandatory fields are missing in the input request. Now over here I would expect the consumer to pass name, age and salary. So if at all they are not passing any of this field, then I'm going to respond back with 400 error along with a message. And the final one is 500 when for some reason while processing the request PEGA will fail to process, then we are going to respond back with 500 error message to the consumer. Alright, let me recap on what we have learned in my last session. As it's a continuation, I want you to just quickly understand. We have created a service package, and in the service package we did a get method. Now this is the resource path which we have defined. This is the ServiceRest which we have defined, and the way we have defined, because it's a get method, the expectation is, the use case is, the consumer should pass me an employee ID, and then I need to pass the detail for that particular employee ID from my local data storage. Because of that reason, why I have made this employee ID as part of my URI, as get cannot have a body. Now if you see, if you remember this, what we did is like, let's say if I have an employee ID which is 123, which is there in my local data storage, and I'm gonna send the response back 200 and then send the respective salary, age and name. If I do not have an employee ID, then what I am going to send back to the consumer is the response code as 404 with a status message. Now similarly, what we are going to do today is we are going to create a customer or create an employee in our record. Okay, this is a post method which we are going to discuss today. Now get and post are different, two different way of handling request, way of passing the request. That's the reason why I've created two separate videos so that you'll have the full coverage. Now first you need to understand how you're gonna construct the URI. Now, if you would have already seen my API basic video, I have already explained on when to use post, when to use get and all these things, right? Now here, what we are doing is, what we did last time we wanted to fetch an employee ID, wanted to fetch the detail based on the employee ID, right? Now what happened is we need to have that employee ID, and as it's a get, it is part of my URI. But here we are going to deal with creating an employee, right? Creating an employee, right? Creating means by default it's going to be post. Now when I say post, that means I'll have the request body. So I would expect the consumer to pass the request in the body. So that's the reason why I do not need, and this employee ID is, I'm the responsible person to create as a server, right? Because I'm acting over here as a server. So I'm the person who should be creating this employee ID rather than expecting the consumer to pass, right? It's like that. When you create an account, you pass all the details and automatically an account number will be created and send it back to the consumer so that you can see on the screen like that. Now that's the reason why I do not need an employee ID. All I can say is post with all the URL, just create an URI called employee. Now because of that reason, what I need to do is say, see, if the first question you should be thinking, can I use this ServiceRest? So as you could see this is an existing ServiceRest, and I've already got a get post all this method, right? Now you would first ask yourself, can I use the post method over here itself instead of creating another service request? The answer to this question is no, you can't. Reason being, here you have already defined your URI wherein you are expecting an employee ID to be passed. Now, if a consumer would not pass you an employee ID, that means you would not be able to send that. This is a mandatory parameter because it's part of my URI. What you can do is, when there is a need of update wherein you would expect a consumer to pass the employee ID along with the body, wherein you want to update the email address, right? So during that time you can expect a consumer to pass the employee ID and an email address, and if you want to update, then during that time you can either use put or post depending on your need, and you can use the same ServiceRest. But because my URL is completely defined here, I cannot use this ServiceRest, so I need to create another one. Now let's go ahead and create another one first, okay, without doing any further delay. Now I'll do create another one. Here what I'm going to do is my service name is create an employee, right? Create employee, right? That's my name. Now what is my package? Employee SP, right? Now here the version will be v1 because that's the first version. Now in the URI template, I'll click on build URI. Here all I need to do is I'll just put a employee. Okay, literal. There is nothing else I need to put. So this is how is going to be my ServiceRest, this one. And now what I'm going to do is I'll create and open. Now if you see here, HTTP localhost, this one is my default one, where this is host and this is my service package. Now all I have is employee, and what method I'm going to use? I'm going to use post method. That's as good as you are telling you are going to create an employee by passing the necessary detail in the request body. So now what is going to be my next step? Now my next step is I'm going to construct a post method here. So what I'll do is I'll create an activity as like we have explained before. Let's say create an employee, right? Create employee, something like that, this activity. Before that, as you already know that I have already a class defined, right? I don't want to define another class. So what I can reuse that class over here. So here what my class is employee ID, right? So xyz hyphen create and hyphen employee API, right? So I have already this class defined where I have a response data transform already defined here. So all I need to do is create a request response object already defined here. All I need to do is create a request object and proceed further by reusing the same class. I can reuse the same class, but I cannot reuse the same ServiceRest. Instead, I need to create a different ServiceRest because my endpoint URL is going to be different for this particular scenario. Now here, now that I have set this resource name in, so what I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and create one over here. Here create employee, which will go and sit in over here. Now this is the int class where it should sit. Now here I'll just put a double slash and I'll save it. Okay. Now here I'll come here. Now couple of things. First thing is here what I told, it's a create, right? So I need to have a request object where I need to expect the consumer to pass is employee ID and salary. let's I would expect a consumer to pass age, name and salary, not an employee ID. Employee ID, I would be the responsible person to create and give it back to them. Now to do that, consider here, let's take this scenario where I would expect all age, name and salary to be mandatory, right? So first what I need to do is I'm going to create a request object. So there are two ways. One is obviously you can right click and do a property, or you can just, because it's going to be a page, what I can do is I'll do a save as from this response and I'm going to create a request object here. Okay, request. This is just a fastest way. Request. Now here I'll say create and open. Now here what I'm going to do is, as I would expect a consumer to pass name, age and salary, what I'll do is I would reuse this same class so that I can reuse this properties also. So I'll leave this as is and I'll save it. Now the moment I leave this as is, right, and I'll just do a refresh, what will happen? Now I'll have a request object, request page also present, right? Now it is present. Now what I'll do is I'll go back to the ServiceRest. Here as part of post implementation, what I'm going to tell here, map the request object. This is just a description, okay? And here map to, what I'm going to do is map to JSON, and the key which I'm going to map is to the request object. So basically I would expect a JSON object. So my requirement is like that. I would expect a JSON object from the consumer, and then I would map them to the request body. Now this is how I'm going to do, and then what I would do is in the response I will just, for the time being, go ahead and description is set success response. And as I have already told you, so I'm going to respond back with a customer ID, right? So that's why what I'm going to do is I'll do JSON and I'll say map to response. So this is the customer ID I'm going to set. And because I don't want that class to be sent, as if you would have seen my earlier video, you would know by now, I'm gonna use here the legacy method. Okay, now this is what the default. Now I'll save it. Okay, now let's go ahead and first construct the activity which will be responsible for us to process the request and get us the customer ID. Right now, first thing is what I told, the requirement is I need to have the three field, which is age, name and salary, to be mandatory. Okay, so to do that, what generally we do, because I've just got three field, I'm going to make it a shortcut. But what generally we do, the first step of an activity is to check for mandatory. So always the first step of an activity is to check for mandatory the moment you receive a request. Here generally we call a data transform, and in the data transform we try to separate. Because I've just got only three fields, in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this when condition over here. Alright, just one thing I've realized. So as you could see, I have created them as part of my service SRVRest, right? Ideally all the integration rules should be part of my int layer. So just to keep it a standard, let's go ahead and change them first before I do it further. Here this is let me keep this as is. Now what I'm going to do is, in the post method, I'm going to save as to the ServiceRest int. Here create employee, just to keep it as a standard, and I'll probably delete this guy. Okay, so all good. I'll save it here. All right, so if I just open, now it should open. Okay, great. Service int. Okay, now what I'll do is, in the condition, what I'm going to do is, here I'm going to put here itself, as you know that there are three fields that I want it to be a mandatory: age, and then salary dot name, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll say request dot age is not equal to blank or equal to blank. Okay, and I'll put a and condition here, because I don't want anyone to be even mandatory missing in the request. So I'm going to put an and condition over here. Request dot salary is equal to blank, and I'm going to put another and condition here. I'll just put double equal to, and I'm going to put another and condition here, and then I'm gonna put request dot name here I'm going to get request.name equal to blank. So I'll just quickly test. So if everything is coming blank, then it will be true. If something is okay, no, this is wrong, right? I mean, I don't want anything to come blank, right? So that means I would say or. It's not and, it's or. Because if one thing is also coming blank, I should not allow them to proceed further. So I'll say or. So now if you see, if anything is missing, that means it's gonna come as true. If all are missing, is gonna come as true. And if all are present, is gonna come as false. So this is what I need, right? Now I put here, now if true, continue when, if false, then skip step, right? Now what I'm going to do in continue when is I'm going to set a property. Now this property, what I'm going to do is, first thing is, if any mandatory field is missing, then we are saying the error message should be the error response code should be 400. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set py http response code here, py http response code here as 400. Okay, and then a message I'm going to set. So in the message I'm going to set in the response dot let's say response dot py message. All right, here what I'm saying, one of the just a message, right? One of the mandatory field is missing. Now let's say in a scenario here, if at all I'm going to execute, because I'm gonna have certain other step in the below, right, where I'm going to write the activity to create that request, right? But in a scenario, if it is 400, that means I don't need to execute anything, right? So that's why what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same thing and put a jump condition here. Py http response code, if it is equal to 400, then I would say, okay, you exit the activity, because there's no point of continuing. If false, then continue when, okay? Or I would say continue with the step, doesn't matter, right? This is done. Now let's quickly test for my 400 scenario, and then we'll proceed with the success scenario. Now to do test, what I need to do is I'll go ahead to the ServiceRest here. So if you see my ServiceRest, I'll quickly just verify. Yes, I don't need to put this one because it's an HTTP connection. And here, okay, now before that I need to create a 400, right? So what I need to do is I'll go ahead and create in the method, okay, this is gonna be my post, here my request, in the response I'll put a default one is 200, okay, but here I'm setting a 400, right? So what I'll do is I'll say mandatory error, okay, mandatory here I'm going to create in service, and here what I'm going to do is in advanced step I'll say dot py http response status code equal to 400, correct? So I'll save it. So here what I'm going to tell them is, if it is mandatory, when mandatory, then give me a response code of 400, and during this time you assign this response object, because this is when I have got the message, right? Now let's say I'll save it. Now let's try to construct the request and pass it from Postman, and let's do a test for 404 first, okay, before I proceed to next one. Now just to do that, I'm going to duplicate this request. Now I'm going to copy the endpoint URL from here, okay, and I'm going to put it here. Now as you know, this is going to be my post, right? So I'm going to change this post, and also let me just update it to create employee, okay. Now because it's a post, I'll have a body, so authorization I'll keep it as is, and in the body what I'm going to choose is I'm going to choose raw. Here I'm going to pass JSON, right? So I'm going to put pass JSON. Now how you gonna write JSON? So this is a very simple JSON you need to write. So in my PEGA, you have request.age and all this thing, right? But from a consumer perspective, they don't need to pass request under request. They don't need to pass age, name, and salary. So what they can do is they can pass directly. So this is how they're gonna pass. So just copy this ID, okay, age. So this is going to be my first variable. So I'll just put variable colon the value. So here let's say age is 27, okay, and then followed by a comma. Now what is going to be my second variable is going to be salary, right? Now copy this salary, in double quotes put salary colon let's say value, right? Anything, then put a comma, and then the third one is name, right? Similarly, double quote, then you construct name and pass, let's say XYZ, okay? Just like that, okay? Or I'll put capital XYZ, okay? In the last one, you don't need to put a comma. So this is going to be a valid JSON. If you want, you can always, you know, go to online and validate it, or if you have the JSON validator in Notepad++, you can validate. So I have got JSON in my Notepad++, so I'm going to validate this just to make sure. So this is a valid JSON where I can see that I've used the shortcut here. But yeah, generally what happened, you can find them in, if you have installed it, you can find them in plugin, and then you can find, you can format it, you can show JSON viewer. If you can able to format, or you can see the JSON viewer miss, it's a valid JSON. So now all good, right? Now I'm going to trigger it, but before triggering, what I need to do is I need to make sure I will trace this one, so that I'll see if my 404 is happening or not. Now here what I'm doing is I'm passing every field, right? So I'm going to pass this as a blank just to get a 404. Now the moment I click on send request, sorry, not 404, 400. So as you could see, because my mandatory field is missing, 400 bad request, and this is one of the mandatory field is missing, right? Now if I just see the tracer, you would see them getting executed. So if I go all the way here, now okay, what is my, this one is create employee, right? Now create employee, as you could see, now my first when condition became true, and then my py http response set to 400. Because it's set to 400, now my activity has become end, because we have put a condition to exit the activity, right? So my 400 response code is getting set properly if I'm not passing the right value or right parameter value, okay? Now this is my 400. Now let's go to the success one. Now to success one, what, let's say if everything has been you know, supplied, what we're going to do is we are going to insert a record in the local data storage. So to do that, where we are going to insert is going to be employee detail. Now this employee detail belongs to which class? It is belongs to XYZ-rest, this one, employee detail. So what we need to do is, first thing is go to page and class and create a temporary page, okay? So temp create employee, okay? Now use this page across so that you can set the value. So first one, what we need to do is we need to do a property set, okay? Now what I'm going to do is a property set, right? So I'll say property set here. No, sorry, my bad. First I need to create a page, right? Now to do that, what I need to do is I'll use this step page, and here I'm going to do page new. So that means I'm creating a temporary page. After I create a temporary page, now I'm going to do a property set for this particular page. Now I'll do property set, okay? Now in the property set, what I need to do is whatever coming from the input, okay, is what I'm going to set. Now whenever something coming from input, at where exactly is going to store, it's going to be part of my request dot age request dot this one, right? So this is what I'm going to do. Now to do that, okay, first thing is from where I'm going to set, I'm going to set from the request body. Now because I have used step page here, okay, and the step page belongs to data, so if I put a dot, obviously I'm going to get the property that is part of this data, right? So to get the property that is part of my request, I need to use a primary one, because before the step page, this is the primary. Now primary dot request dot age, okay, and then let's set all the okay, this age is going to be set in this particular property. Now here I'm going to do, this is my step page. This step page of age is what I'm going to set. Now here this step page name is what I'm going to set the primary dot request dot name. Okay, this is how you're going to set the property. Now same for salary. So let's set the salary also in the same manner. Okay, and here I'm going to directly set the salary. Now the third thing, last thing is my employee ID, sorry, customer ID. So if you see this, employee ID, sorry, my bad.
if you see this data table, right, I've just opened that data type. If I go open a data table, here my employee ID is a primary one, right? I mean, technically, internally it's my primary, but I am expecting everything to be passed from my consumer. But I'm saying to insert a table row in this table, this is the primary key. So that means I have to have an employee ID. So this is the employee ID which we are going to auto generate, okay, which is going to be unique ID, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this employee ID, and there is a function called I think, if I am not, create unique ID. So automatically PEGA will create a unique ID and set for the for this session I'm going to use this create a unique ID. So that means my property is now all set, right? The moment if it is not meant if everything has been passed, now I have set the property. What is going to be my third step? My third step is going to do a object save, because I'm going to save this object. Now which object I'm going to save it? I'm going to save this this object. So I'm going to save object, do a object save. That means it will save that object and followed by a commit method. Okay, I'm not doing right now just to avoid a warning, so I'm going to use a commit method. Now here if you see, these are the 4 steps where my commit is happening. Now soon after my commit happen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the page, right? Because I don't need that temporary page anymore, right? I have removed the page. I'll save it, this one, okay? So this is a sunny scenario, right? Now what happened is, there is a chance while I'm doing object save or commit method, there is a chance I can get an error. So to handle that, okay, before that, there is another thing which I need to take care is, if everything goes well, what I need to do is I need to set it to a 200, right? Which is my success response. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a property set, okay, and here a property set on the step page. I don't need to use this page to do a property set. So here I'll say py http response code. I'm going to set 200, okay, 200, and what I need to send back to my consumer is the customer ID which I have created. Right now this customer ID which I have created is the unique ID which is part of my temp create m dot employee ID now, right? So what I'm going to set this temp create this one dot employee ID, whatever is there, before I do a page remove I need to do this to response dot employee ID, so that the user will get the employee ID. This is what I need to do, okay, and then I need to remove the page. Okay, now the last step which I need to do is I need to set an error, right? Now here write ERR, and what you can do is you do a property set again. So this is kind of handling this runtime error, where if I say py http response code set to 500, okay, 500, and then what you can do is here you can put a py, or I'll say response dot py message. You can put something like unexpected backend error, something like that. Okay, now this ERR, so let's say where all potential chance this can happen from here and from commit, right? So from object save you can put a jump condition and say if status is fail, status is fail, then jump to a later step which is ERR, else continue when. Okay, similarly you put the same thing over here also, as there is a chance it can happen, right? Step status fail, jump to a later step which is ERR. Okay, now the moment you jump means it's gonna come here if there is an error. If there is no error means if I do page remove means if this is executed means I don't want this to be executed, right? So here I put a jump condition and I would say in this if step status is good, right? Step status is good, that means you exit the activity, else continue when. So what I'm trying to do in this activity, I'm first checking for the mandatory field. If any mandatory field is missing, then I'm erroring out with a 400 error. And if this step is getting executed, then no point of proceeding further, as I'm not supposed to create any instance in the data table. That's why I'm kind of exiting the activity over here. If my mandatory fields are good, so over here if it is true, then I'm continuing when. If false, then I'm skipping the step. Then I'm proceeding with creating a page where I'm setting the property of all the value that I get from request and creating this unique ID as this is a mandatory field, and then saving the object and committing for this particular temp page which belongs to the data class. Once everything done, as I know it's gonna be successful, so what I'm doing is I'm setting the response code to 200 and sending back the employee ID to the user for their notification purpose, and then I'm removing this page. If at all there is any problem while doing a save or commit, then I'm jumping into the error so that I can set it to 500 and unexpected backend error. Now here one thing I'm doing it, if everything goes well with respect to positive part, again I'm here kind of exiting the activity. I hope this is clear. That's what I am doing over here. Now let's quickly go ahead and test for all the scenario. So before doing that, another step that we need to do is setting those fields. So at the moment what we have done is we have just done for mandatory one. Now let's set the other response which is gonna be for success one. So here what I'm going to do is I'll do when, and I have already got a success one, so I'm gonna go ahead and use the same. If you see the open success which I've created in my last session is PY HTTP response code 200. So if it is success, then what I'm going to do is, so this is a success response, and I'm going to set this to JSON and here dot response, because this is where I do I've set the property, and then I'll go for use legacy mode. Now let's proceed with another one which is 500. Now here backend error, let's create another one which is backend error, wherein I'm going to check. So yes, let's create, I'm going to check the PY HTTP response code is 500. PY HTTP response code is 500. So these all things you have to kind of put in a when rule so that you can reuse them again and again. So backend error, if it is a backend error, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to respond back with 500. Right here I'm going to set 500, and here backend error, which I might not be able to show you guys, but it's always good to maintain that, because in runtime you never know what it might get error out for various reasons, right? So I'm gonna do this. Okay, so now my I've set three requests, three response. One is 400 when mandatory, 200 when success, 500 when there is a backend error. Now let's proceed and try to test and see if it is happening or not. Now here I have already checked 400. I'm gonna just trigger another time. So 400. Now let me pass a value, but before that what I'll do is I'll do a trace here just so that I can show you guys. Sorry, one second, trace. Okay, so that I can show you guys. Now let me put name as Sri. So the moment I hit, what it's gonna do, it will go and create, and this is what the employee ID I have got. Now if you see, say look at this 8833. Now if I pause it, I'll show you the tracer in a while. If I pause it, I'll just quickly go ahead and show you whether my data type has been created. Now if I go to data type, if I go to here, ideally there should be another record which should have been created. Now I'll just quickly check and refresh it. See, this is the ID which I've copied, and Sri 27 and salary is 24578. So this is how you are going to use Post. Now here obviously I won't be able to test 500 because I don't know whether there will be an error, but you can, as part of unit testing, you can stop that and try to do testing, as if like you are going to pretend as if it's gonna go. So how I can pretend, I mean, just for my unit, when I need to do unit testing, right? Because real time sometime I can't execute all the details. So when I do unit testing, what I need to do is just like if I do property set here, just for temporary purpose, I can just do comment everything so that it will come directly here, and it will try to execute this one. Again, this is purely for my testing purpose. Okay, just unit testing, right? I'm going to satisfy everything. So see 500 and unexpected internal backend error. So this is how we're gonna do unit testing. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and I hope you understood how you're gonna create this request. object, how we're going to map, and how we're going to proceed. So there is another way also you can do it, wherein you don't specifically need to create a request object. Let's say if you wanted to reuse all your data, you can set them to a param.request, and then so in this I'm just going to show you on a very high level. That's another example which I'll see if I can find some time to create that video. So instead of putting into this request object which we have created, right, instead of creating, you can set it to param.request. So what will happen is the entire JSON will set into this param.request, and then you can deserialize by using a data transform and then set it to your respective property. So that is also there. This is one of the easy and best way that you can achieve it. But again, it's all up to what kind of setup you got and what kind of processing that you are looking for. Depending on that, you need to take a call.
That's it for today, and hope you understood clearly. Please hit the like button if you learned something or you like the way I have explained, and leave me a comment if you have any queries or feedback for me. It will help me to improve and also motivate me to post more concepts and videos. As I always tell, sharing is caring, so do share with others so people who do not know about my channel will be benefited. Stay tuned for my next video, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do subscribe and click on the bell notification for my new video updates. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.